It is said that Russia moves towards authoritarianism. So let me just usurp these rights to start the discussion, as we are in a semi-authoritarian country. My name is Sergei Chugurov, 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 and I'm professor of this university, МГИМО, Moscow State University for International Relations, and also chief editor of the best Russian journal on political affairs. It is called Polis Political Studies. I have a couple of copies. Those who read Russian and have insomnia can take this journal. But seriously speaking, just if you take this, you will find an article by one of the best specialists in strategic stability, academician Alexei Arbatov, which is called "The Threats to Strategic Stability." So those who have the privilege of not reading Russian, you can read a long summary, okay, and save a lot of time. Okay, now let me start and introduce you. Mikhail Gamel-Green, professor of social sciences of Victoria University in Melbourne. Then Suzaki Tatsujiro, yes, director of research center from University of Nagasaki and member of Pagуош Committee, National Pagуош Committee of Japan, and Professor Umebayashi, Hironishi Umebayashi. He's guest professor, visiting professor of the University of Nagasaki, Nagasaki University, and our special guest today is Professor Sergei Oznobyshev. He is leading researcher, chief researcher at the ИМЭМО Institute, Primakov Institute of World Economy and International Relations. So, okay, and the first to take floor, I think, is Suzuki-sensei.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming today. Now you have distributed materials. You have agenda of the 2 days conference we just had, Peace and Security of Northeast Asia, PSNA workshop, and then there's a participant list, and also what the PSNA is, called PSNA mission statement. And then we have also, you have a leaflet of the nuclear weapon free zone, both in English and Japanese. And today's most important press conference is we have a joint statement and recommendation by the three co-chairs, which you have also. And let me introduce the distinguished co-chair, Professor Michael Green, and also Michael Hamel-Green, and also Professor Umebayashi, to give you a few words on the statement.
Okay. Now about our procedure. What if everybody here says a couple of words, and after that, please be ready with your question. And now our great professor from Melbourne, from Victoria University, please.
Thank you, Sergey. Yeah. So this was a conference involving experts from this whole region of Northeast Asia, from the two Koreas. We had North Korean delegates there and a statement from the North Korean Foreign Affairs, especially to our conference. We had experts from Korea, South Korea. We had Chung In-moon, who is an advisor to President Moon Jae-in. We had experts from the United States, from, of course, many experts from Russia, and experts from Mongolia as well. So we were able to bring together a whole lot of thinking, and of course we're at a very historic moment with the Panmunjom Declaration on the desire to have denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. And the media, of course, has a big focus, because in 2 weeks' time we've got the big meeting proposed between Trump and Kim Jong-un. And so that, of course, was a great focus at our conference. And we welcome that, and we'd be very concerned if there was any possibility of postponement. Our experts have actually developed a kind of roadmap, a way in which that agreement, if there's a political will on all sides, how we could move forward. And we have set out in the paper you've got in front of us, our recommendations, the proposal to have a six-party Northeast Asian Security Council. That's a follow-on from the previous six-party talks, gradually relaxing sanctions, declaring non-hostility, a very important peace process to achieve peace. Korean, we only have the armistice, so a full peace agreement, providing humanitarian and economic assistance to North Korea, and most importantly of all, establishing a legally binding nuclear weapon-free zone on the Korean Peninsula, and potentially also involving Japan at a later stage. So there were some of the key recommendations there, but we also had wider discussions about the new nuclear ban treaty that was negotiated by the UN last year in July, and how that relates to the process of the non-proliferation treaty. There was a PrepCon conference a few weeks ago, and in 2020 there will be the full review conference. This is important, the relationship between those two, because the nuclear powers, of course, didn't join in the nuclear ban treaty. They didn't join it, but they said the non-proliferation treaty was the way to go. That was where disarmament could take place on a step-by-step basis. So much discussion about that. We had a number of recommendations, which you'll see at the end of the paper. We called for all sides to move quickly to build upon any agreement reached at the Trump-Kim summit. We urged that the other countries of the region, including Japan and the three nuclear powers, Russia, China, and the United States, establish a six-party Northeast Asian Security Council. We recommend that we have a legally binding treaty, Northeast Asian regional nuclear weapon-free zone, but initially covering the Korean Peninsula. We strongly recommended that, one of the concerns, will North Korea actually keep its commitment to denuclearize? So we are suggesting that there be a regional verification scheme, and we will be setting up as a group, we'll be setting up a working group to look at verification to make sure that any denuclearization actually occurs. We encourage all states to commit themselves to taking steps to reduce the role of nuclear weapons. That was one of the previous agreements in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Action Plan, but hasn't really been followed up. And finally, we were urging Japan as a key regional state to fully support and assist the regional moves that we are now seeing between the two Koreas and between North Korea and the United States. Japan could assist in a great way by normalizing its own relations with North Korea and through offering support and resources to establish a regional nuclear weapon-free zone. I'll step at that point. Yeah.
Okay, so I reminded it was Michael Hamel-Green speaking, Professor. Now, Professor Umebayashi from Nagasaki.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
I
want to just add some element from Japanese point of view. As you know, this conference was sponsored by Nagasaki University, the main convener of this workshop. And Nagasaki is the atomic bomb city in wartime and have been working diligently for nuclear weapon-free Northeast Asia, especially by establishing a nuclear weapon-free zone in Northeast Asia. And this is very important time because we are going to see the summit between North Korea and the DPRK. And this opportunity may be critical to advance our idea to make Northeast Asia nuclear-free. And in that respect, we chose this venue of Moscow because we may see North Korean delegates because it is a place they can visit easily. We tried to find other venue, but this seemed to be most probable or most best place to invite them to join our workshop. We have tried 3 workshops like this, and this is the 3rd one. But this is the first time we really got the delegation from North Korea. So it was very good. And they didn't speak in a discussion, but they were they paid attention to what the experts speaking on how the nuclear-free Korean Peninsula will come out. So I think this is very first good result we could obtain through our 3 workshops. So that's what I want to add from Japanese point of view.
Okay. Thank you, Sensei. Now I would like to give a floor to Sergei Oznobищев from Primakov Institute of World Economy and International Relations, Russian Academy of Sciences, analyst in strategic stability and nuclear issues. Please, Sergei.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm words about strategic stability. Well, of course, this was, for 2 days, this was quite an event. And we are very thankful for our, actually not guests, but friends. We were discussing very acute issues, and including military doctrines, nuclear doctrines, and of course, more broader security issues. And the title of the event is The Responsibility of Nuclear States and the role of nuclear states in providing international security and peace. And actually, we are returning to the situation when really the nuclear states have a very special responsibility. But I mean, returning, I am remembering my very young years when we were only starting first attempts for arms control. And it was end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, and it happened so that I was present and was the witness of the SALT I treaty, which was concluded here in Moscow, and the ABM treaty in 1972. It was quite an event at that time too, and we supposed that we are already very firmly standing on the road to more security, to more arms control, to more friendly and cooperative relations. And unfortunately now we are in the situation of not just almost 40 years ago, but even more, for we are starting from worse positions, for we have come, we have done a lot, we have come through a lot of traps, and we have invented a lot of solutions and made a lot of decisions. And unfortunately, in our security, we are somewhere on the level of the new Cold War or even pre-Cold War. And this is a very, very bad situation, of course. And one of the purposes of our meeting was to try to discuss the solutions and to find ways of the present situation. I suppose that some of these steps, at least, in to better security, they were found. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Oznobищev. Now, the more dramatic point of our get-together, your questions. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Hitoshi Omai, Japanese newspaper Mainichi. So, two quick questions. One is your language, saying you said establish of the six-party Northeast Asia Security Council. It is resuming the six-party talks, or are you talking about like a new idea, new formula of the six-party something? And the other question is the Professor Mebayashi. You're talking about North Korean delegation. So, at which level of delegation? Do they come from its own country, DPRK, or their embassy staff? Thank you very much.
Professor Mebayashi. Michael first.
The six-party Northeast Asian Security Council would be similar to the previous talks, but it would be an ongoing council. That's what we're recommending. It wouldn't just cease over a short period. It would be a continuing body. But obviously that would be, I mean, we have to see what comes out of the Trump-Kim summit to see what might be possible there. On the issue of the North Korean participation, that they were from the North Korean embassy here in Moscow. But we did, in addition, have a direct speech, written speech, especially for our workshop from Cho Un-ju from the Institute for Disarmament Peace and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the North Korea, particularly mentioning the hoping that our conference would be successful. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, you can see the names of the delegates from North Korea on the last page of the participants.
Okay. So I'm glad we have mentioned North Korea. I visited several times the North and the South, and I would say that the North of Korea is more dynamic, more interesting country than the South of Korea, I would, because the air trembles of concentration of people's energy in Pyongyang, I would say. So I would say that Pyongyang is one of the most interesting and exciting places in the world. And this is why it was in the center of discussions during this conference. Now, your questions, what, please? Mm-hmm.
I am a journalist from Kyodo News, Moscow office. Question for Mr. Mebayashi. You said that in this forum, North Korean delegation didn't comment anything. Why they didn't comment anything? Maybe they were not given any right to comment or something. Please explain. And question for Professor Michael Hamel Green. Now in Japan, there is discussion that now Japan cannot play any role in the process of denuclearization. How do you estimate how can Japan play a role in the process of denuclearization? This is my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You see, this conference is the conference for experts of the issue on nuclear issues. And the participants from North Korea are not the experts on this issue. So their participation had a precondition. They cannot speak on the topics, but they want to listen and to get, information. So that was a precondition for their participation.
In terms of how Japan can assist in this process, well, I think Japan has already welcomed the Trump-Kim meeting. Obviously, it would participate in six-party talks and play an important role there. It can assist in the talks as well by normalizing its own relationship with North Korea, solving outstanding problems, and I know there's a number of them, and offering diplomatic support for the creation of a denuclearized Korean peninsula. Japan has in the past supported nuclear weapon-free zones. It was one of the key states that actually supported a nuclear-free zone in Central Asia. Japan supplied the main negotiator to bring those states together, and it provided funding support, and over a space of about 9 years, that treaty was negotiated and signed and ratified in 2006. So Japan has experience in assisting the creation of nuclear weapon-free zones, and this is a prime situation. We're in a new situation of dialogue and rapprochement between the two Koreas, and although those North Korean delegates to our conference didn't say anything in the actual sessions, they had lots of informal discussions with the South Korean participants in the conference. We had a dinner last night, sitting next to each other, but there was a new spirit of discussion and dialogue that was very much evident at our conference and bodes well for the forthcoming Trump-Kim summit meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. One more question, please. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm Masakatsu Ishii from Jiji Press. Regarding Korean Peninsula issue, now it is focusing on the way of denuclearization. And did you discuss the way of now there's a bit difference between USA and North Korea. So let me clarify. You are discussing. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think there's particularly in the media treatment so far, there's been an assumption that the denuclearization will only be North Korea. But there is the actual statements North Korea has made refer to denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. So there would be an obligation in terms of South Korea for there not to be any presence of nuclear weapons. Most nuclear weapon-free zones throughout the world have a basic principle, the total absence of nuclear weapons. So there would be some commitment needed on the part of South Korea and United States, in terms of the United States not deploying nuclear-capable systems within the Korean peninsula. Down the track, there may be some agreement that we would foresee some sort of agreement whereby maybe the joint exercises that take place between South Korea and the United States don't involve nuclear-capable bombers, that kind of thing, which North Korea has been particularly preoccupied by. We are seeing, though, a new phase where there may... Well, I think there will be a need to actually verify the denuclearization, but it could well be that in the initial stage there's a freeze and a commitment not to reprocess fissile materials, and some of this can be independently verified, but down the track there will be a need for a more intensive verification system to ensure commitment not only in North Korea but also in South Korea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just to add one thing. The term of denuclearization of North Korea is not correct. Actually, what is going is the denuclearization of Korean Peninsula first, and then it may expand to include Japan and Mongolia, and it will become nuclear weapon-free Northeast Asia. And the process. In terms of the process, I think the much discussion done in this conference was the details will very much depend upon what kind of outcome will come from the June 12th summit. So we didn't get into details in that respect because there are many points and they are very much obedient on the outcome of the coming summit. So we want to wait. That's a main point, I think.
Thank you, Professor Bayashi. More questions? Yes, please.
So one more time, Mainichi newspaper. Just wondering about your Russian colleague. Did discuss on this? Well, speaking of six-party talks or whatever, Russia plus Japan are afraid of that possible they are out of this discussion. So just wondering, during 2 days of conference, did you talk about this, or there aren't any this kind of fears Russia will be out of this kind of talks?
As far as I know, we have in mind the idea of renewal of the full-scale six-party talks, and several years ago I was in several times I was visiting South Korea, and when I once came to the constant participants of the talks, they said that we have a new. It was just an interesting episode for me as partially a journalist. They said that a new U.S. ambassador came to the South Korea, and he was asking everyone what are these six-party talks about, and what is the agenda and the role of the countries play there. But the idea is that Russia should return them as soon as this event will resume. And speaking as a whole on this issue, of course, we are all full of hopes. But you know that we never know what President Trump will do in the evening or in the morning. It depends on the day of the time. Well, now it is evening, so we can only guess about the morning of the next day. Unfortunately, I would remind you that we had already not a very bad beginning, but this beginning was one of the beginnings. It was more than 20 years ago, when in 1996, I suppose, the former President Carter came to the North Korea, and they already started a new historic initiative. And where is this initiative? So we should be very, very careful about this beginning. Of course, we should believe in the future, but it should not be overwhelming optimism that everything would be solved, or that the steps that would be made will be the steps along the long road to the better future. But of course, we should try, and that is why our friend from the Japanese centers, well-known centers, and the Pagуош are involved in this. For now, the role of the expert community is very important.
Can I say? Professor Suzuki. Yes, I just want to add my impression about the process of the nuclearization of Korean Peninsula. Of course, there are differences views of how to approach, but there is a consensus that we have to learn the lesson from the past. So there's a deep, detailed discussion about what happened to the past agreement. The second is that it's very important to keep the dialogue open, continue. And we should not go back to the atmosphere of conflict. So that's the most important part of the discussion. And so there are detailed discussion on how to approach the process. There are different degrees of opinions, but those two things I think most important kind of consensus we have. Is that okay?
Thank you, Mr. Suzuki-sensei. Can I interrupt a little bit the regular flow of our press conference? I'm quite interested in one question, perhaps to Professor Suzuki, whether Japan can go nuclear. I visited Japan 2 times this year. It was in January and in March. And I visited Hosei University. You know, from the 25th floor of the university, from cafeteria, I saw American Patriot launchers just across the river, the moat. And I understood at that moment how the Japanese are nervous being neighbors of North Korea. So this is why this question is was in the center of discussions these 2 days. So my question, our Japanese colleagues are from the city with the highest level of nuclear allergy. Is there any scenario when Japan would try to have nuclear weapons and go nuclear, if the threat is real? Do you see this opportunity just in front of your country, or it's absolutely excluded and impossible? What will you say, Professor Suzuki?
Of course, this is my personal view, and I have to emphasize that we have never discussed this. No topic of discussion in the workshop of this particular subject. But of course, as you say, because of the North Korean threats, there's a sense of urgency how to respond to the nuclear threats. But overwhelming majority of Japanese public still don't want nuclear weapons. And but at the same time, though, there is an increasing voices to the dependence on the nuclear weapons in the United States. Whether that is good or not, we have to continue to discuss. But it is true that suddenly the nuclear deterrence is coming a common word in the normal newspaper.
Oh, thank you. Oh, hard times. Yes, I know. So, please, your questions. Mm-hmm.
No questions.
No questions. We still have everything is clear, or everything is absolutely unclear. Huh? Yes, that's good. You're welcome. Please.
This is my personal deep question. How do you estimate why now South Korea is doing so active diplomacy? I don't understand why they became like that. So this question for all professors, please.
Professor Green.
Yes, we have had expert presentations at our conference on this question of the motivation, and we have a South Korean specialist who did present a paper as well that we circulated at the conference. So one of the key factors is Kim Jong-un is concerned to economically develop. It's previously North Korea was basically the military had the ascendancy in terms of the priorities, but in fact Kim Jong-un has replaced in a lot of the senior councils the military by civilian and is looking to economic development. So that is a key motivation. The other motivation is that he has already shown the ability to have tested nuclear weapons and also tested an intercontinental ballistic missile. So he hasn't really put it all together in terms of demonstrating that it could be nuclear armed. He's not maybe at that stage, but it's at a stage where North Korea might feel it has the bargaining ability to have denuclearization and also get the kind of economic assistance that will help them forge ahead economically.
Mm-hmm. Professor Umabayashi, you would like to add something?
Actually, in Japanese, they took the Heishin Rosen. They want to develop nuclear weapons and economy at the same time, but they think they completed the nuclear deterrence. I don't know. It is. We have some reservation, but they think they completed the nuclear deterrence. Then they want to concentrate to the economic development. So this was clearly expressed at the Central Committee recently, several weeks ago. They explicitly mentioned the change of the emphasis of this, the energy, human resources and economic resources should be put into the economic growth.
Yes, more questions? I understand our Japanese colleagues are the most active, and I understand the nature of the Japanese miracle. Yes, so this is the first conference, press conference, where there were no questions about Crimea, about Boeing, about Ukraine. That's good.
That's term of Putin, yes?
Would you like to?
Well, we are glad that we're at last we are doing business for in a good sense. Some time ago, it was said that no business as usual. I don't know what is usual, but we should solve the acute issues of security. Of course, first of all, for it is unfortunately during the last years it was severely undermined, and it was said during the discussions. It was mentioned once more that the arms control is just in a dead end. Nothing is going on, and we were looking for the ways out of it and trying to find the stimulus for it. So the situation is very sincere. We were sincere. The situation is very serious, and of course we should apply all our efforts and all our resources to solve it, and we should really do good business to find the solutions to all our questions.
So, if there are no questions, I would like to congratulate all of you on the International Children's Day. And it's the beginning of summer. We have passed through a winter of our discontent, of our troubles. Now we are entering to our summer of our hopes. Yes, Professor Suzuki Tatsujiro.
I just also want to add that in addition to Northeast Asian security issues, we did have a discussion on the role of nuclear weapons in security. And that is also very important. And in addition to also the Ban Treaty and NPT review conference, all these discussions also very important for the participants from North Korea to listen to, I think. And it is good for us to also discuss the difference between nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. And those are the key issues also we have to address when we talk about the North Korean issues. These are also very important issues to address too. That's why it's in the recommendations. We do have such kind of statement in our recommendations.
So thank you, all of us. I'm very grateful to you for your patience and for your interest. And you can just put your question informally if you can. Now that's the end of our today's news conference. Thank you.